the first thing you have to understand about the United States, especially, is that the United States is a country and a culture that equates being a hard worker with being a good person. And so in order to be a good person, you have to work hard. And if you're not, by our standards, working hard, you're not a good person. So understand that if you were raised in this culture, and probably even now if you live in it, you might feel that internal push-pull. I'm not a good person if I'm not working hard. And the problem with the phrase working hard is that, especially being a business owner and in this kind of like phase of capitalism we're in with the whole side hustle nonsense, we interpret working hard as working more.
Hello, Empower Nation. Welcome to Empower Her Money podcast. I'm your host, Angela Duncan. Today's episode is sponsored by freemoneytipsbook.com, freemoneytipsbook.com. Head over there and download your free ebook, 7 Unshakable Tips to get you started on your financial journey. Today's episode, I get to interview Dr. Kristen Donnelly with Abby Research. She's also a best-selling author. We are going to talk about avoiding burnout as a business owner, hiring employees, and why you need to delegate. Hi, Kristen. Welcome to Empower Her Money podcast. How is your day today?
It is 9 a.m. as we talk. So far, nothing catastrophic has happened. Everything, but the day is young. How is your day going, Angela?
Definitely the same. I'm in Miami. The sun is shining. And so, yes, we're very blessed. So I would love for you to start off with your story, your journey, and kind of how you've got to the amazing stuff that you're doing today.
Well, currently, I hold 2 concurrent full-time positions, which sounds a little bit chaotic, but works out really well. I am the COO and co-owner of a network of companies called Abby Companies that I co-own with my brother. And there's around 5 divisions, I think, at this point now, and maybe even a couple more. I'm not even sure what we have as DBAs and what we don't, but and then within that umbrella, I am the founder of Abby Research, which is a division within that. And so as my day-to-day life is spent between ownership things, my brother and I took this over from our father. So I've been observing business and part of a family business for around 33 years. So there's quite a bit of experience there. And Abby Research is where I combine all that knowledge and then 2 master's degrees and a doctorate in people studies, along with 2 of my best friends who also have people training. And we take all of that research that we make, and then I have all this business knowledge, and we combine that all to help business owners treat their employees better. And that everyone can just, live the life they want to live. And so that's kind of it. I got here, my dad bought an existing company when I was 7. And then since then, I've been a part of this thing. Child labor laws do not apply to family businesses. So I've been working on it for a long time. The company is in Philadelphia, which is where I sit right now. So left Philadelphia to go get all of my education, including a doctorate from Northern Ireland. And then moved back to Philadelphia and started my own division in 2015.
Wow, that's awesome. So you just talked about your doctorate in Northern Ireland. Any advice? Because my daughter is 20. She is finishing up college here in the US, but she wants to go study abroad afterwards. So talk just for a minute on that. I know it's completely off of what we were going to talk about, but I'm curious to know what made you decide that and any advice for maybe kids that are thinking about doing the same.
So it's a complicated answer. My answer is for master's degrees, do it. Like it's a 1.5-year master's. It's really research focused. It's, all that kind of stuff in Europe and the UK, like do it. Recognize that, if you go into more higher ed, like you may have to do some more cross training. You may have to do some stuff like that. So overall, think about the goal and double check that a degree from an international institution will help you get that goal. So
Awesome.
that's
Thank you.
that's one thing. And then my general advice for a doctorate is only do it unless someone is paying you to do it, or you absolutely need it to advance your career. Other than that, it is an exercise in masochism. So I never recommend it unless it's one of those two things.
Yeah, great advice, especially for the younger audience listening. So, you have an incredible career. You've done, you're an avid researcher. You've got tons of books behind you. I think one of the topics that I would love for you to touch on as a business owner, a lot of my audience is business owners, and we work ourselves, so much. So
Mhm.
I experienced burnout in my previous company that I sold. How do you, recommend for entrepreneurs to kind of avoid that, and some tips that maybe can help them not get to that burnout level too?
She takes a deep breath. Um, the first thing you have to understand about the United States, especially, is that the United States is a country and a culture that equates being a hard worker with being a good person. And so in order to be a good person, you have to work hard. And if you're not, by our standards, working hard, you're not a good person. So understand that if you were raised in this culture, and probably even now, if you live in it, you might feel that internal push pull. I'm not a good person if I'm not working hard. And the problem with the phrase working hard is that, especially being a business owner and in this kind of like phase of capitalism we're in with the whole side hustle nonsense, we interpret working hard as working more. None of that is true. None of that is true. So if you can first of all recognize that that push pull is normal, but is also, like, in terms of your human body and what is sustainable, a lie. Working hard does not mean working more. And being a good person and a good boss and a good all that other things, a good owner, does not like mean you have to work more. Like it just doesn't, it's just not true. So once you acknowledge all of those things, and if you have more questions as to how I got to that point and why I teach it that way, our book unpacks this over like 350 pages. So feel free to dive in, but it goes back to the Puritans with the funny hats. So like all of that is true. As somebody who has watched my father start, he bought one company, grew it to 7 companies at one point, and he did it all by himself.
Hmm.
And I think by the time I was 35, he was on like cardiac event number 9.
Hmm.
And I watched him be miserable and stressed out. I watched him not living the life that he wanted to live, even though at the time he would have, I think, told you that it was. But now that he's out of that and we look back, that wasn't the way he wanted to spend his 50s and 60s with that level of stress. And so now that my brother and I have taken over, our kind of goal all the time is to not live like that. So we looked at a lot of what dad did. He delegated very little. He
Hmm.
wrote very little down on paper. He asked very few questions of his employees. And some of this, I need to be clear, he was raised in corporate in the 80s.
Mhm.
And this is what leadership looked like in corporate in the 80s. And I am 40, I'm an elder millennial. My brother is younger than me. He's like less of an elder millennial. And we have the benefit of being taught leadership and having this conversation about leadership like God since I was in high school. The older generations don't necessarily have that luxury. So
Mhm.
I've been being taught and thinking about what leadership means for nigh on 30 years.
Mhm.
So I can look, I mean, like literally, I remember when I was in college, they started a leadership certificate to add to my major, and I did
Mhm.
it. So, like, that is new. That was revolutionary in the year of our Lord, 2002. So, like, we are all still new to these ideas. First of all, understand that. But second of all, understand that you have the right as an owner, as a founder, as a whatever title you want to give yourself or that is appropriate to you, to look around at other people and say, oh, I do not want to do that. And realize that business is all about innovation. And just because something was done one way on a Monday does not mean it has to be done that way on a Friday.
Mhm.
So something that we have looked around, we have been very passionate about people innovation. Product innovation, we were already doing. So Brian and I have been very passionate about people innovation. How do we innovate how we treat our people?
Mhm.
So there's been shifts. We delegate so much more. We intentionally hired people that we could delegate to, which wasn't as explicit a criteria before we took over. We impressed upon them the responsibility that we were giving them in a way that still respected them and respected the fact that any work I give them that needs to be done at home we are a factory. None of us are work from home. So if my folks are checking their email at 10 p.m., it better be because they feel they like need to double check something to go to sleep rather than I have put any pressure on them to work at night. That is a failure of leadership on my part.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever time boundary you have created for your employees, if you are violating it or they feel you are violating it, that is on you. That's a you problem, not a them problem.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of apps to do that. I hate time tracking apps, by the way. I can rant about how that's ridiculous at any other given time. So big tip is learn to delegate. So understand that you are a good person even if you don't work more. Dig into that, go to therapy as you need. I'm still in it. I get it. I'm living in it. I teach this every day and it's still like a fundamental belief of my life. Learn to delegate. And if you can't delegate, ask yourself why.
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is, well, I would do it better, then that is something you very legitimately need to talk to a therapist about because that's not necessarily true. If it is that everyone here wouldn't do a good job, then I would like to ask why you hired those folks and what training you can do to get them to that place. And if you can't get them to the place you need, then your organization is not the right fit for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that. And the third tip is to figure out what actually makes you happy, both inside and outside of work, and do those things.
Yeah, love that. And you briefly touched about, and I love the way that you worded it. If everything that you know is in your head and it's not written down somewhere,
That's a
then you
crisis.
can't duplicate it, right? So
Absolutely not.
talk about that.
Oh gosh. So I'm a big believer in you can't edit as a writer. So like I came up through academia and one of the dictums was you can't edit what's not on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was constantly, and now I'm a creative fiction writer and a lot of others, and I'm a nonfiction writer. We have one book under our belt. We're writing the next. I co-wrote it with my co-trainer and best friend, Aaron. And it's the thing we tell each other all day, every day, even if it is a bullet pointed list that makes no sense to anybody but you, get it on paper. So that's the first thing. You can't look at a problem objectively unless it's on paper. Get it out of your head. And if it's a private problem, if it is something no one else sees, write it on paper and shred it, but get it out of your head.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just that it's not replicatable, which you are completely correct. It's that it's not safe. Like your business cannot be safe. Your employees cannot be safe if you are the only one that knows how anything is done.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone, as crass as this sounds, could die tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, speaking of, you should have life insurance if you own a company. Like, please make sure you have all that legal things in a row. But like, our dad had a really significant heart event right after I moved home. And it was one of those, he had minor events before and we all kind of knew the path out of it. And this one was like, no, this might be it. This might be it.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened to happen while we were on vacation. And my brother and I stood at the end of this dock in Mexico and looked at each other and said, it's all in his head. Shit, it's all in his head. And so thank every single deity. We're faith-based people. So we were incredibly grateful to our God that he is back and with us and we still get the gift of him. And it's one that we don't take lightly. But the first thing I did when I got back from that vacation was start to make a list of everything we didn't know.
Right.
So I would ask I would recommend that if you are an owner, find your second in command and ask them to list everything they don't know.
Mm.
And then you get to decide if that's something they need to know now, or if that's something you make a whole list and password protected and keep it on your server.
Yeah.
And then they know the password, but make sure that any curiosities they have about company history, like at the time, we had 25 customers who were like a real core of our business.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian and I realized we didn't know how any of them started, how any of the relationships started.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And so we're like, this is an important thing. We're in manufacturing. Relationships are incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
It's not transactional at all. You get the sale because you have the relationship with the person. a lot of times. And so I sat there, I got open a voice app, like a recording app on my phone. I hit record and I just started asking him questions. And then I sent that interview off to a transcriber. So we have the whole transcription of all of those stories. And we have them now that we can go back and reference. And that's already helped us with some of those customers. Because like someone will be like, well, we haven't been doing this for a long time. And Brian can be like, actually, our first sale to you was in 1998. So we do have an established relationship. And like dad could have just pulled that out of his head. Well, we didn't know in 1998, I was 15. So, like all those kind of things. You have to have it on paper for your best work and to keep everybody safe and to be able to innovate and to be able to replicate and to be able to do all those other things. But I think one of the things that often gets lost in the write it down conversation is the respect for your employees.
Yeah,
They don't deserve to panic because you got in a car accident.
very true. So on the employee topic, being that you are a business owner, how do you hire? Like, is there anything in your process that perhaps is a little unique that you could recommend to other people to make sure that they are hiring the right people that can grow with the company or be in the right position for their team?
It's a great question. It all depends on position. Let me say that. Like we hire chemists, I hire office workers, we hire laborers. So there's nuances in every single one. But one of the things that we say for office jobs that are going to involve both a somewhat attention to detail and creative thought, which is quite a lot of office jobs.
Mhm.
You need them to be thorough, but also creative. And that's a hard balance to walk. Something we've done is kind of create a very specific set of questions that we recruit on ZipRecruiter. We're not big enough to use like anybody else. We just use ZipRecruiter. And we say you answer one of the following 3 questions. And so we can judge if they notice one. If they answer all 3, then that's kind of a red flag to us. Like a little bit, we have to double check if they were nervous or if they like, why did you answer 3 when we told you to answer 1? But then we ask one very bog standard question. Why would you be good for this position? And then we ask 2 oddball questions. So the 2 questions we always ask are, what, if you were a baseball player, what would your walk-up song be?
Hmm.
And if you were a kitchen utensil, what would you be?
Hmm.
And there is absolutely no right or wrong answers to those. But we're small enough that you got to be a little bit quirky to fit in here. And like, we know the culture and we don't want it to radically change because of one person. And so
Mhm.
we love seeing a little bit of their personality in those answers.
Mhm.
I love that there are people that are just like, I'd be a spoon. But then the best people we've hired have been like, I would be a spatula because of meh. And I didn't even ask for justification. They just gave it and I could see their thought process. Because
Uh-huh.
for jobs like that, you want to see the thought process. I've also found that mixing up interview techniques where some people get to write answers down and they also get to answer questions out loud so that you honor both learning and speaking modalities of introversion and extroversion. Good employees do not need to think on their feet all the time. You don't need a quick thinker all the time. That's just not how humans work. You need a good balance. I'm very torn on skill testing, very, very torn on that. And how it's executed and the amount of time it requires an interviewee to
Mhm.
give before you're going to compensate it. So if you want that skills test, I would encourage you to compensate it somehow because that's a lot of time that you're asking for them. That if they don't, like, if you don't hire them, that's like 15 hours of their lives wasted, and that's not cool. So think creatively like that. Think that they're already humans before they come to you.
Mhm.
But yeah, our big criteria is how do you make decisions, not how quickly you make them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely it takes me, that saying, the ready, aim, fire. I'm a ready, aim, 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 maybe aim some more and then fire. That's
Yeah,
just my personality. And I
completely.
wanted to
Yeah.
answer your question really quick about the kitchen because like an idea just popped in my head when you said that. So I think my answer to your kitchen question would be something along the lines of nothing because I don't cook and my kitchen is a foreign country and hopefully you get my humor behind that too. But
What?
you
No,
know,
somebody said DoorDash once, and I
yeah,
just howled. I was like, "That's the best."
yeah,
Like, yeah, that's fantastic. Somebody said a juicer because I get the most out of life. I'll never
uh,
forget that one. Like, yeah,
some
any
good creative
creativity I
answers.
want. Any
Yeah.
creativity. I just want to see how you see the world.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And it's true. You have to be protective of your environment. You've worked hard to create an environment in which you want to be present
Yeah.
in. So allowing someone to come in and change that is not, the goal for that. So definitely
Absolutely
love
not.
that too. All right. So you've been dropping some great tips. What maybe perhaps one or two other for business owners that you have seen mistakes made or something that works really well for you guys as well?
It's a great question. Um, have a person in your life who is willing to understand your business, who is not in it. You don't need a
Mm,
venting partner who doesn't understand anything. You need somebody who is willing to do the work to learn with you and learn your life.
mm,
And spoiler alert, that probably isn't your spouse or partner. That like that's they're a different perspective.
yeah.
So like I have a couple friends who are also business owners in different businesses, and they don't do exactly what I do, but they do enough that if I say no, 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 the advice you're giving me isn't going to work and here's why, they will listen, honor that, and say, okay, but what about this?
Mm,
So find someone like that. It takes work. I get it. Sometimes you have to go to networking events, which are circles of hell. I understand, but like it's really, really worth it. The other is to take all your vacation days.
mm,
Take them all. And if your company cannot survive while you turn your phone off, begin to immediately put the work in to do that.
mhm,
Figure out what is both restful and joyful for you. And if those are two different things, like I love Disney. I love Disney. It's so joyful. I love going. It's a big deal and not restful. Like it's not restful, but going to the Jersey Shore is. So I make sure that both things happen every year.
yeah. Love
And
that.
so that's that would be my thing. Like everyone is like, well, I go to Wildwood every year or I go to California every year. And it's like amazing. Routines and traditions are important. Double check that those aren't more stressful than they need to be. Double check that those are still restful and or joyful, and build rest and joy into your annual schedule.
Yeah, I like that. The first one, definitely, if you can step away as the leader and turn off your phone, even the first time you do it, you're going to learn where your holes are. And then
Real
you,
quick.
yeah, then you come back and you say, okay, how do we fix this? Or, what do we need to put in place for next time? I remember that when I was early on in my business career, the first time we took vacation, I was so scared.
Hmm.
And, we're like, okay, we're just going to shut off the phone completely. And a lot of problems happened, but we needed that. We didn't know what was broken. So we were able to come back and fix it. And I love that. And then the second one about vacation, yes, time block and leave it there because you need that mental rest. You can't be the best version of yourself. Then how do you expect your people to be their best version?
Exactly. And you have to model that too. You have to model being a company that values their time as humans and not their time as productive entities for you.
Yeah, because you've probably seen the same people don't necessarily leave you for money. They leave you for
No.
the feeling of how, what they feel like when they work for you.
I think I saw the last study, the most recent study I read was of all the people that quit their jobs post pandemic. So like 21 is when we kind of, I can argue that it's still not fully over, but 21 is kind of where we mark that. Only 13% left for money.
Yeah. Wow.
And business owners that we talk to all the time don't fully, like they'll be like, well, I can't keep people because I can't raise their salaries. And I'm like, fantastic. Like great news. You have control over like 87% of other people. Like, you're good. But yeah, very few leave. There are certainly some who leave for money. Absolutely. And either you can't control that or they can't control that. We've had people leave us because somebody was going to double their salary. Mazel tov. Chase that. I can't do that. So please go. I'm glad we were your stepping stone.
Mm-hmm.
But we've had people leave because it was like their supervisor was intractable and it didn't work really well.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that became an us issue of
Mm-hmm.
training that supervisor and just saying like, hey, we got to figure out, like, this person left because of your behavior.
Yeah.
So either you change your behavior or we need to recognize you can't supervise XYZ kind of people.
Right. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
how do we navigate this going forward?
Yeah. Such great information, Kristen. I'm going to switch a little bit and ask you a fun question.
Okay.
If you could have a superpower or a super talent, what would it be and why?
Like instant travel,
Yeah.
like whatever, like it, like the just like flash, you can just be somewhere like immediately. um yeah, my husband is from Northern Ireland, and so his family and a good chunk of our friends and family are all still over there. And I'm blessed to have friends and family all over the country. And when I'm sitting on my couch and I'm like, man, I just really love to see Jay, and I could just like flip up to Ottawa like at the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
That's what I would love to do. Yeah.
Awesome. So if our audience wants to learn more about you, what is the best way for them to reach you?
Our website, we've got a couple, but I'll direct you specifically to the one for the book, because I think that is going to be the best way to kind of hear more about the ideas that Angela and I just talked about for a couple minutes. And that is cultureofburnout.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time today and all the information you are helping our business owners take their business to the next level.
Thank you so much, Angela. It was such a privilege.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into Empower Her Money podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast, and leave a review wherever you are tuning in.